The holidays are right around the corner, and that's good news for retailers and for job seekers alike. There are an abundance of holiday jobs, but how do you turn a seasonal job into something more permanent? And joining us by Skype to answer that question and much more is business consultant and author Kay Palmer Hartle. Mr. Hartle, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
What is the job market like right now?
Well, I think we've seen unemployment go down, but we still have a lot of people who have given up on searching for a job. And so I've read some things that suggest that the jobless rate is really much higher than it appears just because people have stopped looking. So some of those people may be the ones who are particularly interested in seasonal work.
Definitely. Well, retailers are certainly ramping up for this holiday season. How does someone looking for a job get his foot in the door?
Well, I think you need to find something where you've got some experience would be the first advice I'd have on that is if you can match your experience with what the seasonal workers or the seasonal employer has to offer, that would certainly be the best thing because people who are looking for seasonal workers are wanting to find somebody who's not going to be a huge problem to train. Um, just having had a job, let's say you're going to look for some sort of a retail experience. Having had a job before is an advantage, just because you know the ropes, you know how to behave in an employment situation. So the first time worker who's never had any experience whatsoever is probably not going to have the easiest time finding something.
Well, you talk about three ways to turn a seasonal gig into a full-time job. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I think probably number one goes without saying, and that is if you do manage to land something, I think I characterize it as strut your best stuff. Definitely, find out how people dress at this place of employment and wear something that fits in and that is appropriate. Being on time shouldn't even need to be said, but quite frankly, there are people who've not been in the workforce before who think that they don't have to get there exactly when they're told to be there. That's really you don't want to hassle the manager. In other words, you want to help the manager. You do that partly by just being able to do the basics, as I call it. Also, you can look to stay longer if your hours are flexible and you can be helpful. A lot of times in these seasonal jobs, they're dealing with people who are new to the workforce, and people sometimes cancel. It's also a time of year when people start to get ill. So if you can be flexible and can give more hours than what you originally signed up for, that can also be helpful to the manager. So that's my number one thing is do the basics right.
Excellent advice. And you're mentioning, things that you can do to actually stay on after the holidays are over. But what advice would you give to someone who really wants to move up after landing that permanent position?
Right. So the second thing that I would suggest is that you start looking around once you've been there for a while. Usually these jobs last for, I would say, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 weeks, at least if you start at the beginning of the retail season. Look at how the place works and see what you see. In other words, look for places where you could give some useful input to the manager about how the system that he or she manages works. And in particular, if you see that there are places that you could improve the operation, that could be a useful thing to share with that person. Now, there's a caveat here, which is that unwanted advice is often thrown into the trash can. So if you do find that there are some things that you could share with the manager about how to improve the operation, I suggest that you first of all ask the manager if he's interested in the advice or not. That way you won't be wasting your time. Sometimes people are so hassled they just can't deal with anything more right now. But sometimes just simply asking that question, would you like some feedback on how I see things working here, could be a very useful tool. There's a new employee is a unique commodity. in a couple of ways. One of which is that they are bringing a fresh pair of eyes to bear on the situation. And that's a very useful thing. I remember years ago when I went to work for an employer, he came to me after I'd been there about 6 weeks, and he said, "Before you get co-opted by the system, I'd like to hear some feedback from you about what you see in our operation." And he was a wise manager. He knew that I had a fresh pair of eyes on the situation, and that could be useful to him.
Excellent advice, Kay Palmer Hartle. Thank you so much for your help and for your input today. Thank you for joining us.
Well, you're welcome.